Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a shortcut, really, right into the mind of one of the most unvarnished diarists of the 20th century.
We're talking about finding the profound, the really deep stuff, hidden in plain sight.
Right, inside the daily, the trivial, sometimes the painful, and the completely mundane. It's this incredible lesson in human observation.
And self-reclamation, absolutely. Our source material today is, it's expansive and it is deeply, deeply intimate.
Okay, so what are we digging into?
We have selections from Helen Garner's diaries. Specifically, we're focusing on the final published volume, which has the very appropriate title, How to End a Story.
And this covers a huge period of time, right?
It does. It stretches across two really turbulent decades for her, from 1978 all the way to 1998. And our mission really is to excavate these little nuggets of knowledge.
About what it means to live an artistic life.
Exactly. The artistic life, these incredibly complex relationships, and, that eternal search for meaning. But it's all crystallized through her private and often brutally honest writing.
And the context here is, it's just vital. You have to understand the emotional stakes to get what's going on.
Of course.
These diaries, they cover enormous upheaval. We're talking professional, personal, everything. We're watching the slow, really difficult disintegration of her relationship with her second husband, who she calls F.
And then the fallout from that, which leads right into the turbulent, emotionally exhausting end of her third marriage to V.
And V is the one who gives the final book its title.
He is. And you have these huge, messy human conflicts. We're talking infidelity, rage, guilt, anxiety, but it's all recorded right alongside these tiny, specific domestic realities.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? The way they're filtered through that lens.
That juxtaposition, as you say, is the entire engine of her art, is her psychological survival. The writer Leslie Jamison, she makes this point in her introduction.
And what does she say?
She emphasizes that Garner's diaries, in both their form and their content, they show that meaning dwells, and this is a quote, everywhere.
Especially in the day-to-day stuff.
Especially in that daily domestic reality that most of us just, ignore or dismiss. It's no wonder that Garner herself said, and this is incredible, she confessed, quote, "In my heart, I always liked my diary better than anything else I wrote."
Wow, that admission is it's a thunderbolt, isn't it?
It is.
It tells you everything you need to know about the integrity of the work we're about to talk about. She was writing for the page, sure, for publication, but mostly she was writing for herself.
Capturing the truth, the unvarnished truth, without the demands of narrative or, what other people might think.
So the private truth always outshines the published, edited version.
Precisely. And that leads us to the core tension we're going to unpack, this constant friction she lived with.
Between what?
The artistic desire for greatness, for public recognition, and the messy, terrifying reality of a life that is just constantly collapsing and reforming and demanding she put down the pen and, pick up the pieces.
So that's where we're going. We're going to look at these personal conflicts, the intellectual sparring.
And those small, surprising observations that really only someone paying this extreme level of attention could ever capture.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should probably start with her core artistic identity. The struggle to define herself as a writer in a world that so often just minimizes the domestic sphere.
Good place to start.
Let's go right to the beginning of the journey then, 1978, the start of the Yellow Notebook, because that moment, it really sets the stage for decades of insecurity to come.
It does. Even after she's won major acclaim for Monkey Grip, Garner is still wrestling with this thing she calls the anxiety of scope.
The anxiety of scope.
It's the defining writer's dilemma, really, for anyone working in memoir or autofiction, especially back then in the late 70s.
When all these epic geopolitical narratives are dominating everything.
Absolutely. So she's achieved success, but she's still plagued by this sense that her writing is just fundamentally too small, too contained.
She has a line about it, doesn't she?
She does. She captures the feeling perfectly. She says, everyone's talking about apocalypse now, the great historical sweep of events. My work seems piddling, narrow, domestic.
Piddling. That fear of being piddling is so layered, though. It's not just about size.
No, it's about relevance.
It's the fear that she, as a female writer focused on relationships and the home, is simply irrelevant compared to these grand, usually male narratives of war and history and, capital C culture.
Right. She feels like she's documenting the footnotes while the main text is happening somewhere else.
But the irony, of course, is that her ability to focus so intensely on the small things is what makes them universal.
That's her genius. She might worry about being too narrow, but just look at the depth of her observation about her own interior state.
You mean the bombed city part?
Exactly. In one entry, she details this devastating feeling that all her remaining life is contained, running underground like a bombed city.
It's such a massive existential truth about being confined, but she communicates it through this really specific, devastating image rooted in, well, in the landscape of war.
And that ability to translate interior devastation into such sharp physical imagery, that's where her power is. And it extends right down to the physical spaces where she tries to work.
Showing how your environment just dictates your mood, your entire creative output.
Oh, absolutely. Take the famous description of her workroom in Mooney Ponds in 1979. It is the absolute antithesis of the romantic idea of a writer's studio.
It sounds wretched.
It is utterly wretched. It's a physical manifestation of her feeling of being stuck. She describes a clogged hand basin full of old brown water.
Ugh.
Where she says maybe mosquitoes will breed, but she doesn't care. The place is stagnant, and so is she. She confesses, I'm writing 3 sentences a day. Wretched, ill-tempered, nervous, unbearable.
And then she questions everything.
Everything. She asks, maybe I'm a one-book woman.
That whole scene is just, it's so crucial. The environment reflects the interior state, and the state is stagnation and just profound self-doubt.
And when she does manage to get the words out and send them into the world, then she has to deal with criticism, the inevitable, often brutal process of reception.
Right, and she documents how she has to prepare for that, to build up a defense.
With brutal honesty. She girds herself, writing that she must accept that I have enemies and be robust about it.
But just steeling yourself doesn't stop it from feeling like a violation.
No, and we see that real fury when magazine editors, the copy subs, she calls them, take a piece she wrote and just gut it.
They cut out all her jokes.
All of them. They violate the entire tone of her argument. They truncate the central thesis. And her immediate reaction is that they made her look like an idiot.
And it's not just about hurt feelings, is it? This is about her professional integrity.
It's a total violation of it. For Garner, humor isn't just, lightness. It's part of the argument. It's part of the tone. To take out the jokes is to take out her personality.
It's almost like a professional assault.
It is, which brings us back to that conflict between the published work, the thing she has to defend in public, and the diary, which is her true confidant.
Like with her novel Honor.
Exactly. When it's about to be released, she resolves not to even look at it anymore because she knows it has several fairly serious typos.
She can't control it once it's out there. The published work is flawed, but the diary, that's eternally hers to shape.
And contrast that frustration with this genuinely philosophical moment she has about the diaries themselves. At one point, she actually considers burning her old notebooks.
Why? Just out of embarrassment, a desire to move on.
I think so. But she ultimately decides against it. And her reasoning is profound. She accepts the truth that the records are secondary to the person. She writes, you'll be the same person with the same past, whether you burn them or not.
That's a powerful moment of acceptance. You can't just burn away the shame. The messy past is inside you.
Exactly. And yet, this cycle of anxiety and self-hatred, it's not constant. It's punctuated by these bursts of pure confidence and professional discovery.
Right, these moments where the working identity she wants so badly just snaps into focus.
Like when she gets that one-year grant.
That's a huge moment. That material freedom allows her to rent a room in the Nicholas Building.
And it faces north. She has a view of the sky. And she uses it as this platform for self-reinvention. She declares, I will get curtains, I will get a weekly tram card, I will be a working woman.
It's her version of Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own.
It's a tremendous moment of self-actualization. By renting that room, she is deliberately constructing a professional identity, a woman who commutes, who has a separate space, who is serious about her craft.
She's building a wall between the work and the domestic chaos.
An intentional one. And that's what allows for the real creative breakthroughs. She describes this almost alchemical moment when a character, Vicky, starts to exist in her head.
And she loves just letting this character float around in my mind.
Bumping up against things that are in there. This leads to what she calls a thunderbolt realization. A creature is beginning to exist. A guide leading her into a story.
And this creative world is all-consuming.
Totally. It demands total fealty. She notes that when she is living night and day in the world of the novel, she is, quote, not available.
That's a devastating self-diagnosis, really.
It is. She's admitting that the creative life requires a solitude so complete that it runs directly counter to her relational needs. She's married to her work when the work is demanding, and that inevitably causes conflict with the men in her life.
Which is a perfect bridge, actually. Her artistic isolation is self-imposed, a necessity. But now I have to talk about the emotional solitude that is imposed on her by these failing relationships.
Right. Let's get into that landscape of love and conflict.
Speaking of relational needs, let's move directly into the raw, complicated landscape of her marriages. We'll start with F, her second husband. Their relationship is just. It's characterized by this high domestic volatility.
But also moments of true, if tense, affection. F seems to operate on this fascinating tightrope between being this comedic genius and, well, casual offhand cruelty.
And the diaries are full of these moments where tiny disagreements become enormous battles of will.
Like the fight over the constellation.
Oh, it's hilarious, but also so telling. She points out a constellation late at night, saying, "There's the saucepan," because for 37 years, that's what her father taught her to call it.
And F's reaction is just, it's almost violent. He corrects her. That is not the saucepan.
It's the perfect, trivial microcosm of a marriage under strain. It's not about the stars.
No, it's about whose personal history, whose version of reality gets to win. They are two people absolutely refusing to yield on the most trivial point.
And the tension is just palpable. But he also had this real magnetism, right, which explains the attraction.
Oh, for sure. One of his bandmates tells Garner, F is very funny. He's got such a fantastic delivery that you laugh even if you don't understand what he said.
So she's drawn to this quick wit, this intellectual charm.
Even if that same wit can turn sharp and dismissive.
And it certainly does, especially when it's applied to her work or her creative attempts. The piano story.
Right. She's practicing the piano, and she admits she was doing it rather sloppily, but his delivery is just so harsh. He comes in and tells her flatly, I think what you should do is play the piano when I'm not here. It's pretty annoying.
It's not just insensitive. It's a dismissal of her trying to create something.
And it reflects a common pattern in these competitive partnerships. You minimize your partner's creative effort to maintain dominance in the shared space. He wants control over the soundscape of the home.
And that dynamic of control and suppression just gets amplified in her third marriage. To V, this is the heart of how to end a story.
And the core conflict between these two writers is profound and intellectual,
but it's constantly filtered through this ridiculous level of pettiness.
Proving that great philosophical minds can still fight over whose turn it is to scrub the sink.
The soap.
The soap. They share this mutual existential struggle. She notes that each of us had a horror of being engulfed by the other and had to fight against it.
The defining conflict of two deeply independent artists sharing a life.
But their deep issues manifest in these ludicrous microfights, like the famous contest between me and V about what each of us has done to keep the soap from going mucky in the bathroom.
It is ridiculous, but it's so illustrative. The mundane object, the bar of soap, becomes the focal point for this huge battle over shared responsibility.
If you can't agree on whose turn it is to wipe the soap dish, how are you supposed to agree on whose version of reality is correct in a novel?
And this tension, it just builds and builds to the inevitable eruption.
Which comes with the discovery of V's infidelity. Specifically, the draft of a love letter to a woman she calls X.
And she documents the wild scene that follows with, as she puts it, vigorous specificity.
Oh, she gives us the raw details. She describes running straight past V, gasping and sobbing. What's the matter? I read the letter? You liar. You cheat. You lied to me.
And in a moment of just pure physical rage, she smashes his espresso maker, an object he prized.
It's an act of violent, but very short-lived catharsis. And this is where the deeper psychological analysis comes in. She reflects on it later.
What does she say about it?
She talks about the wonderful, brief sound of the smash, that satisfying crack that releases the tension, but then realizing it's very short, and then you have to clean up the mess. You have to get down on your knees.
That is the ultimate metaphor for emotional destruction. You pay for the catharsis with cleanup.
And the conflict with V wasn't just physical or romantic. It was this consistent intellectual tyranny that just slowly eroded her self-confidence.
He's presented as the detached intellectual, always trying to maintain the high ground and frame her emotional responses as, what, irrational?
Exactly. He dislikes her brisk independence and just cruelly tells her she has no beliefs, no center.
I mean, what a deep psychological cut, especially from a partner, to tell an artist that their entire worldview is hollow.
It's a way of making her doubt her foundational self. And he reinforces this with his mannerisms. She says he often has a knot of contempt between the eyebrows.
He also dismisses people he disagrees with by turning them into these intellectual caricatures.
Like the stupid woman whose only memorable feature was her very pointy nose. He just reduces people to objects of derision to maintain his intellectual superiority.
And his psychological evasiveness is, well, masterful. He claims he doesn't believe in jealousy.
A very convenient statement that allows him to disregard her feelings about the affair as something intellectually unsophisticated. When she calls him out on being controlling, he asks, "I'm not a tyrant, am I?"
And her response is devastatingly insightful.
It is. She says, "I think you're probably the kind of tyrant who simply assumes things will be done the way he likes them, and if they're not, he's surprised and rather hurt."
She sees right through the passive-aggressive control. It's rooted in expectation, not overt commands.
And the core psychological reality of the affair, as she tries to understand it later, is just heartbreakingly utilitarian. She reads that the introduction of a lover, quote, gives the ailing relationship a short breathing space.
So his need for a happy secret place in your imagination wasn't just infidelity, it was a maneuver.
A psychological maneuver to refresh himself and keep the marriage alive, however diminished. He was using the affair as a life support system for himself within the marriage.
And that realization is the final push.
Towards separation, yes. Garner begins making deliberate moves towards independence, finding her own physical space.
Even when he's sick, she's cautious.
She tries to be nice to him, but she knows he would see genuine sympathy as unmanning, another act of intellectual control over their emotional exchange.
So the slow, painful decision to rent her own flat St. Neot is her true commitment to bolting.
This apartment becomes the physical realization of that room of her own we talked about earlier. She needed a place with a desk and a bed, a space for work and rest that was entirely hers.
And she explicitly says it paves the way for bolting.
The psychological relief is palpable. She writes that when V is there, the flat and her heart shrink.
Yeah.
But when she returns alone, they both expand.
That expansion is a literal physical measurement of self-reclamation. She is literally taking up more space when he's gone.
The relationship itself had been geographically and spiritually confining.
And all this chaos in her professional life and her marriages, it's always running alongside her relationship with her daughter, M.
Which is underpinned by this universal and heavy burden of mother guilt.
Especially for a woman writer trying to carve out that solitude for her work.
Her guilt is so intense. It's rooted in memories of her daughter's early childhood upheavals and feeling shame for her boredom with her childishness.
Admitting you were bored by your own child, that's a moment of radical honesty that most people would never commit to paper.
It reflects the pressure to be the perfect, always engaged mother. And high-stakes moments are just harrowing.
The scene where M is taking her entrance exam.
It's almost physically painful for Garner to watch. She sees M's face, white with nerves, and she feels, quote, ready to kill. I cried all the way home on the bus.
It's this almost violent, overwhelming, protective instinct that just overrides all her intellectual detachment.
And there are darker memories, too, more troubling ones. There's this terrible moment of witnessing M punching herself in the head during a squabble.
She says M did it methodically.
Methodically, for some time before Garner even noticed, which leads to this deep internalized parental shame. Recording that detail is an act of accountability for her.
But M is also fiercely perceptive. She's often the source of much-needed clarity.
Absolutely, especially about the parental conflicts. After overhearing a massive fight, M asks with a sly laugh, was I awful?
Her ability to find humor and self-awareness in the chaos is key. She's not just a passive figure in the drama.
Not at all. She's an active, witty observer. And later, as M grows, Garner expresses just immense pride. She describes M playing Bach's unaccompanied cello suite.
Number 3.
Right. With guts, despite making mistakes. It's not the technical perfection she praises.
No, it's the effort, the emotional attack, the courage to play a piece like that, which just reveals everything.
And moving from that immediate bond to the universal experience of loss, Garner documents her struggle with grief, especially after M leaves home.
It's a major transition, and her sister, who often serves as her emotional analyst, helps her make sense of her paralysis.
Her sister diagnoses her symptoms as classic grief, the blankness, the guilt, the idealization of the lost person.
And her sister's advice is crucial. Crying helps if you can do it.
And she emphasizes, go into it, don't be busy, use it. It's advice focused on active engagement with pain, not avoidance.
But Garner then takes this and makes a profound distinction of her own. one that reveals a new phase of emotional maturity.
A distinction directly tied to her craft as a writer. She realizes that, quote, sadness is general, broad, heavy, passive. Sorrow is sharper, more focused, more active, working hard, laboring with sorrow.
That is a tremendous nugget of psychological wisdom. Sadness is something that happens to you.
It's a heavy cloak you wear. But sorrow is something you work through. It's focused, it requires effort.
So by saying she's laboring with sorrow, she's linking the processing of loss directly to the intense, focused energy she puts into her writing.
She transforms passive misery into productive engagement. And this capacity for emotional labor is mirrored in her observations of her own parents.
And how their patterns were inherited. The relationship with her father is so complex.
Especially when he struggles to congratulate her on her third marriage. Instead of happiness, his response is immediately cautious, judgmental.
He says, it's the third time.
Followed by the concession. They're both writers, though. His pessimism just undermines the joy she's trying to share.
And her sister has this crucial insight into their father's deeper possessive dynamics.
Right, noting that he keeps buying and shifting houses so that their mother doesn't develop friendships that would exclude him.
That's a subtle, almost chilling form of control. He creates a lack of community for his wife so that he remains the undisputed emotional center of her world.
Which you can see informs Garner's own subsequent fight against being engulfed.
And finally, she reaches this really difficult, almost heartbreaking realization about her mother.
That her mother will forever see everything bad that's happened to me as my fault.
Which just encapsulates the impossibility of escaping some of these intergenerational judgments.
And provides context for Garner's constant internal quest for self-justification.
Let's pivot back to the literal act of creation itself. The diaries are full of the physical and mental labor of writing. And she does not romanticize the process.
Not at all. It sounds like constant terror and resistance. It's the terror of the blank page, coupled with the professional anxiety of being a writer who can't summon the words.
She actually says she's scared to go to her office.
I'm scared to go to my office in case I can't make things up. She contrasts this with V's structured methodology, noting her own way as one of blundering in blindly and scrub-bashing her way through a trackless forest.
That comparison is so key to their intellectual friction. V, the philosopher, needs a fundamental map before he starts.
While Garner operates in chaos, navigating by instinct. She trusts the process of discovery over predetermined logic.
But when she finds that flow, her description is just delirious.
She captures the sheer physical joy of swinging into a scene, running great long sentences, one of them half a page long, and the feeling of triumph afterwards.
And the reward for all this intense mental effort is entirely physical.
Running downstairs immediately and buying herself a pasty from the San Remo bakery.
A pasty. A pasty is the reward for a creative breakthrough. It's so visceral, so human.
And yet, even after that high, the self-critique is just relentless. She feels critique that she never invents anything and is just transcribing.
Which is the classic, often gendered criticism leveled against writers who use personal experience as their core material. It undermines the craft involved.
Right. Critics imply she's a medium, not a maker. But her diaries prove otherwise. The discipline of her self-editing is extreme.
She sets incredibly harsh standards. She resolves to, quote, absolutely currycomb the tics and adverbs and adjectives and pairs out of this goddamn novel.
That is the work of a dedicated literary craftsman, not a mere transcriber. And despite this deep dedication, she struggles intensely with accepting compliments.
Especially from V. When he says her work is fabulous, she notes, I cannot accept or compute that kind of comment.
Which speaks to that ingrained narrative of self-deprecation she's constantly battling.
She finds inspiration and contrast in other literary figures, using them to sort of map her own artistic philosophy. She really admires Roland Barthes.
For being charming, direct, for tackling subjects without trying to impress anyone, he represents a clarity and lack of pretense she aims for.
And then there are the more moralistic critiques she records from others, which directly challenge her choice of subject matter.
Right, she mentions a biographer closing the White Hotel because contemplating the most horrible things is seen as a sickness and, quote, the mark of an inadequate intellect.
An astonishing statement. It suggests that if your subject is too dark, you are intellectually deficient. You prefer avoidance over engagement with messy reality.
Which is a crucial philosophical conflict for Garner, who focuses entirely on messy reality. And this ties back directly to V's argument about her own vision.
He argues that the life she presents in her work is not real. He claims she holds out a false belief in the essential goodness of people.
A picture of how she'd like life to be, not how it truly is. It's a challenge she clearly grapples with.
And finally, she engages with that Roland Barthes quote, that writing involves small acts of war.
Smothering the other, asserting mastery in solitude. The ultimate definition of aggressive artistic self-determination.
But she questions whether this applies to her.
She does. She describes her own process not as war, but as something more psychologically complex. Confrontation, then reconciliation, then integration, then release.
Her process is about healing and synthesis, not conquest.
Exactly. It's about confronting the self, not conquering others.
Now we get to the section where we can just pull out some of the small, vivid moments that Garner encounters, the true nuggets that show her acuity as an observer.
These observations often inject a sense of the absurd or the startling into the flow of her domestic chaos.
The sheer breadth of her observation is phenomenal, like the moment in Paris.
Oh, the sudden, incomprehensible blast of anger. A drunk black man in a cobbled street yelling, "De la pourriture!" The rot at them. It's this moment of external, visceral chaos intruding on their tourist experience.
And then on the opposite end of the social spectrum, she captures the absurdity of celebrity culture. The Queen Mother.
Leaving the hospital after having a fishbone removed from her throat, and the crowd is crying out, "How are you feeling? How are you feeling?"
The intense collective anxiety over such a minor ailment is a perfect snapshot of cultural obsession.
And her literary analysis is often just in these sharp, memorable bursts. Her description of George Eliot's Middlemarch.
As a substance smooth of surface, but containing firm lumps of foreign matter.
I mean, that perfectly captures the difficulty and the reward of reading Eliot. And her observations of others at work are so precise.
Watching the Chinese street artist cutting a paper rooster.
She notes that he seemed to keep the short-bladed scissors still and move the paper instead.
Which is a fascinating observation because it reverses the expected dynamic. The artist is moving the material, not the implement.
An insight into how true mastery works. She also captures profound human failure in small scenes. The man whose wife thought she won because he came back after an affair.
Garner notes the wife's satisfaction did not quite convince me.
And that the air in the house was thick. That silent observation of residual bitterness is so powerful. She sees past the facade to the psychological reality.
And the section on surprising beliefs or eccentric characters shows her just absorbing the world around her, even the oddest parts.
She meets a woman who declares that a menstruating woman can prevent plants from growing just by walking through a garden.
Because her energy field is, quote, in such a mess.
A slice of pure, eccentric folk belief. She also notes the common idea that people who've had something dreadful happen to their children seem to have a glass wall around them.
Suggesting this profound, isolating difference that trauma creates.
But these strange moments are constantly interrupted by moments of profound horror, reminding her of the real, uncontainable stakes of existence.
Yes, the confrontation with mortality is so stark. She lists 15 people she knew, her age or younger, who had died. And she's only 42.
A stark statistical confrontation with her own mortality. And then there's the news report of the bus crash in France.
44 pale, polished timber coffins lined up. One marked enfant non-identify, an unidentified child.
The graphic simplicity of that, the specificity of the pale, polished timber, that's what makes it stick.
And finally, her visit to the birthing center. The reality is just immediate and overwhelming.
She glimpses a bloody Trent being sewn up, sees a huge placenta in a dish, and observes the appalling tininess of premature babies. She says she wanted to sob out loud.
The raw, immediate physicality of birth and death just cuts through all the philosophical and relationship drama.
Reminding her of the messy, fundamental nature of the human body.
Ultimately, these diaries are a record of a search for meaning something enduring beyond the chaos of love and publishing.
And Garner attempts to find spiritual or psychological ground, particularly in moments of distress.
When she's at her lowest, she has this clear, pragmatic thought that when you are this far down, you ought to pray.
She describes it as presenting itself like a reminder of a practical technique, a very pragmatic approach to spirituality, prayer as a tool.
But structured religion doesn't always work for her. She goes to communion and feels awkward on her knees among the pretty, slender, gray-haired ladies.
And concludes, the mighty force is not there. The ritual fails because her need is profound and internal.
And yet sometimes that profound meaning comes in a torrent, but from internal sources.
She describes a powerful sudden joy where the mighty force in the form of a meaning or an idea entered her and fused with her spine, making her shake and weep. She wasn't afraid of it. She summoned it.
Which suggests that profound meaning is something she accesses internally through deep emotional and cognitive work, not through external ritual.
And this internal search aligns perfectly with her path to psychological growth, especially through therapy. She begins realizing the external chaos she's living often mirrors internal unresolved conflicts.
That recognition of pattern is the ultimate therapeutic breakthrough. She realizes her emotional response to panic, rage, and flight is exactly how she reacted to her father.
Identifying that pattern is key to dissolving what she calls the hard box of everything, the rigid emotional defenses she'd built up.
It's critical. By linking V to her father, she understands she wasn't just reacting to V the man, but V the symbol of an original threatening authority figure.
And that allows her to stop cracking hardy, stop pretending she's tough, and start crying and shouting, allowing herself to feel fully.
And we see that growth in small, powerful moments outside of therapy, too.
Like when she describes managing an exchange with a man that involved, quote, not giving him what he asked for without the urge to apologize.
She looks down and thinks, I didn't say sorry. Hooray! A tiny, hard-won victory in refusing abjectness.
And the contrast between her emotional honesty and V's intellectual avoidance remains stark even as they separate. She is honest about her fantasy state regarding an affair, describing it as a stupefaction.
And if she reports a dream to V, his comments are always aesthetic, never psychological.
He maintains that high, detached intellectual distance, which just confirms why she has to achieve full independence.
She understands the consequences. She has to live secretly in a strange city asking people to lie for her.
But she realizes she can no longer bear the shrunken half-life required to stay married. The physical and emotional cost was just too high.
And the final, simple advice from her friend MC brings it all back to a manageable truth.
You can either put it down and bolt, or you can move back in and be the wife and fight. I don't mean fight her, but fight for what you want with love.
And she chooses to bolt. She chooses independence, understanding that the fight would have killed the very spirit she was trying to save.
Which brings us to the end.
Our deep dive into Helen Garner's diaries, especially how to end a story, reveals that the art of ending anything, a relationship, a project, a period of life, is rarely clean.
No, it's a constant abrasive friction between the artistic need for fierce solitude and the fundamental human need for messy, imperfect connection.
And what Garner achieves so brilliantly is the transformation of her personal chaos into this detailed, meaningful observation.
She recognizes the essential, repetitive patterns in her life. She concludes she needs to find out why she so often gets herself into situations where people have to symbolically murder her.
It's an act of radical self-diagnosis, really, preparing her for the next round of work, the next chapter of life.
And as we close these notebooks, we're left with the immense pressure V put on her writing.
The suggestion that she burn the diaries to protect his reputation and their shared private life, her refusal is the ultimate declaration of artistic and personal freedom.
And it's our final provocation for you today.
She realized that in order to write freely, she had to drop the expectation of posterity, the potential judgment of future historians or, future ex-husbands.
He writes, in order to write freely in here, all I need to do is decide that the book is for me and not for some bloody archive.
That is the definitive statement on honesty versus image. And that raises the question for all of us, especially in this hyper-documented age.
Right.
How does the knowledge that your life might be recorded, or even just archived on a smartphone, or shared online change how you choose to live it, or how honestly you choose to describe it?
Do you curate your life for the archive, or do you live it freely, messily for yourself? A powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.